Annie was murdered by her husband and best friend in her previous life. After being reborn, she returned to 10 years ago. Looking at her best friend and husband sitting together, Annie's heart was filled with hatred. This time around, she was determined to make her best friend and husband get married, so as to divert her own tragic life. Everything that happened next was exactly the same as in her previous life. Annie knew that Kelly would deliberately knock over the dinner plate, spilling food all over herself. So Annie pushed Kelly over in advance, and as a result, Kelly's dinner plate happened to spill on Jack. This made Annie realize one thing: what was meant to happen would still happen, but Annie could decide who the protagonist would be. Just like before, ordered Annie to wash his clothes, but this time Annie refused. It was the first time Annie had ever refused someone, and she felt incredibly exhilarated. That night, Annie was going to attend a class reunion, which was also the thing she most wanted to figure out after being reborn. In her previous life, when Annie attended the class reunion, all her classmates ignored her. When Annie went to the restroom, she even heard someone talking about how she had hurt Kelly. The cowardly Annie didn't have the courage to stand up and refute, but hurried home instead. This time around, Annie was determined to find out why everyone hated her. Before leaving, Annie threw away everything related to Kelly. Then she bought the most beautiful clothes and got a very fashionable haircut. When Annie appeared at the restaurant, all her classmates were stunned. Annie directly confronted her classmates, asking why they were saying bad things about her behind her back. From their accounts, Annie finally understood the truth. It turned out that everything was Kelly's doing. Kelly falsely claimed that Annie liked a boy, and that boy liked her instead, so Annie had been deliberately targeting her. Kelly's acting was superb, winning the trust of her classmates, and that's why they started isolating Annie. Upon learning the truth, Annie was furious. She immediately called the boy over. His appearance completely exposed Kelly's lies. Annie also scolded all her classmates. After venting her anger on behalf of her previous self, Annie was ready to leave, but Tony suddenly confessed his love to her. Tony had always silently liked Annie, but in her previous life, Annie only had eyes for Jack, the scumbag, and didn't notice Tony. This time around, Tony noticed Annie's changes and finally mustered the courage to confess his love to her. This made Kelly extremely jealous. She decided to steal Tony away from Annie. So Kelly found an excuse to break up with her boyfriend and then calculated Tony's work schedule, scattering toys from a box on the stairs. She then deliberately fell into Tony's arms, and just then, Annie happened to appear.